Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Picture a completely everyday scenario. We've all seen it, right? Imagine a teenager pulling out their phone and opening that front-facing camera. For just a split second, they see their actual, natural face. But then, almost in the blink of an eye, they watch that exact same face completely transform right in front of them. Literally in a micro moment, this filter snaps on. Suddenly, their skin is totally poreless. It's perfectly smooth. Their eyes look just a little bit larger, the jawline gets a tiny bit narrower, and the lighting? Oh, the lighting is absolutely flawless. In real time, that camera is generating this beautifully idealized, hyper-responsive version of themselves. They smile, and this absolute perfection smiles back.
But here is the massive question we really need to unpack today. What happens when the filter turns off? When that digital perfection just vanishes? That exact same real face suddenly feels tired, or uneven, or just kind of wrong. And honestly, this is the wildest part. Absolutely nothing about that child's actual physical face changed in those 3 seconds.
Which brings us to our first section, the shifting reference point.
So, the real core of what we're looking at isn't just about one heavily edited photo on a social media grid. No, it's about how repeated, daily exposure to these altered faces completely rewires our internal baseline for what is normal. See, there's a huge difference between old-school photo editing and the tech we have today. Traditional editing, that usually happens after the picture is taken. You're tweaking a static image. But real-time filters, they alter the image while the kid is staring right at their own reflection. They move, they laugh, they talk, and they watch this idealized version respond instantly. It's literally like a magic mirror. So their comparison target isn't some distant celebrity in a magazine anymore, it's a seamlessly upgraded version of themselves.
And that leads into Section 2, Playful versus Perfection Filters.
To really grasp the impact here, we've got to calmly separate the playful stuff from the perfection-seeking stuff. We are dealing with very different types of filters. On one end, you have your playful or artistic ones, slapping on puppy dog ears, stars, or crazy funhouse distortions. Those are so clearly imaginary. But on the other end, we have appearance-enhancing and face-reshaping filters that smooth out skin and subtly alter proportions. As caregivers, we absolutely must distinguish between creative play and appearance correction. Why? Because those correction filters are quietly whispering a completely different message. They communicate that the natural face actually needed improvement before it was acceptable to be seen.
All right, let's dive into Section 3, the filtered self-discrepancy.
This brings us to a super fascinating, though slightly alarming, psychological concept. Self-discrepancy is basically the gap between how someone sees their actual self and their imagined ideal self. Now, before filters existed, a kid might just have a passing thought like, man, I wish my skin was clearer, or I wish my jaw was a bit sharper. It was just a fleeting thought. But filters make this ideal self a concrete visual reality. Instead of just wishing they looked different, they literally stare at exactly what they would look like. It makes that gap between real and ideal so much easier to constantly monitor and way, way harder to ignore. And constantly monitoring that gap can trigger a pretty toxic internal monologue. Something like, my face looks better only with the filter. I literally cannot post the original. And the research backs this up. Experimental work actually shows us that the physical process of editing itself is what matters. Taking and editing selfies was found to increase negative moods and facial dissatisfaction in young women, even if that final polished image never even made it onto the internet. Just the physical act of zooming in and tweaking highlights all those perceived flaws.
Let's move to Section 4, Distorting the Visual Diet.
So beyond staring at their own reflection, we've really got to consider how these filters warp what a kid thinks everyone else looks like. Think about it. Notice how certain human features are just quietly disappearing from their screens? When feeds are completely flooded with beautifully edited faces, things like normal skin texture, a little facial asymmetry, natural body variation, acne, scars, or even just ordinary everyday lighting, they all become basically invisible. Kids are losing an accurate sample of what actual human beings look like. They end up comparing themselves, their friends, and their families to a selectively altered, completely digital population. Now, I want to pause here and be very clear. We need to neutrally look at what the data actually says. Correlation does not equal causation. While a high investment in selfie editing and sharing definitely correlates with body dissatisfaction and internalizing these really narrow appearance ideals, simply using a beauty filter does not automatically cause a psychological disorder like body dysmorphia or an eating disorder. Those are highly complex conditions. But the data does show us exactly why caregivers should focus on the specific behavior of editing rather than just panicking over total screen time. Okay, Section 5, the 7-part action plan.
So now that we know how this reference point is shifting, how do we actually handle it without freaking out? Well, we implement a concrete, calm, and completely actionable filter literacy plan. Step 1. Identify the type and function. You need to ask, is this filter just for identity-exploring play, or is it appearance-correcting to chase approval? Step 2. Make the modification visible. Calmly and without any judgment at all, put the filtered and unfiltered images side by side. You're not asking which one is prettier. You just objectively name the changes like, oh, look how the eye size changed, or notice how the lighting and skin texture shifted. Then step 3, teach the child to consciously label this altered content.
Actually, giving them an exact script for this is remarkably effective. Have them try saying something like, this is an edited image, this is entertainment, not a normal appearance standard. Handing a kid that precise language gives them the power to verbally and mentally separate digital entertainment from their real-world self-worth. You are actively building their visual literacy right there.
All right, moving right along to steps 4 and 5. Step 4 is creating unfiltered zones. We are talking about things like family photos or private video calls where appearance-changing filters are absolutely off the table. And the goal here isn't to force them into some uncomfortable public exposure. It is simply about maintaining a healthy, ongoing familiarity with their real, natural face. Then, step 5. Reduce repeated retaking and correction. You have to set reasonable limits on how many selfies they can edit for a single post. This physically stops that exhausting, endless loop of zooming in and searching for tiny flaws that literally didn't bother them 2 minutes ago.
And to round out the plan, we have steps 6 and 7. Step 6, curate that visual diet. Actively help them follow accounts that show diverse, completely realistic faces, skin textures, ages, and body types. Normalize actual human reality. And finally, step 7. This one is foundational. You have to build their identity entirely outside of their appearance. Strengthen who they are through their character, their sense of humor, their hobbies, and their relationships. Give them undeniable proof that they are valued for so much more than just being visually perfected on a screen.
Which perfectly transitions us into Section 6, Identity Beyond the Screen.
So here's the kicker. A massive part of this entire 7-part plan working, it relies entirely on us, the adults in the room. Kids are ridiculously observant. They definitely notice when you repeatedly smooth out your own skin, or when you insist on immediately deleting every single slightly imperfect candid photo. Adult modeling is absolutely critical here. We have to avoid presenting our own altered appearance as natural reality. So try reframing photos out loud. Say things like, hey, this photograph is a memory, it's not a test of my appearance. Because modeling honest image use drastically shrinks that gap between the family rule you were trying to teach and the actual family practice your kids are watching you do every single day.
Ultimately, what's the big picture here? Look, our goal with this explainer isn't to create some kid who never ever edits a single photo. Honestly, that's just not realistic in today's digital world. The real goal is to build up their visual literacy and their emotional awareness. We want them to be able to enjoy digital creativity and have fun without ever forgetting what an ordinary, beautiful, uniquely textured human face actually looks like.
And that brings us full circle, right back to our single most powerful tool. What happens when the filter turns off? Asking this one deeply empathetic question and then genuinely listening to the answer without instantly demanding perfection is how you figure out if a kid is just having some harmless fun or if they are truly terrified of being seen as they are. So next time you or someone you care about opens up that front-facing camera, ask yourself, are we completely comfortable letting them simply be themselves, or have we accidentally outsourced our self-worth to a string of code?